So, one of the phrases that I would love to never hear again, never be uttered again by any person, is the phrase, I don't have a choice. Now, this phrase, I don't have a choice, is deeply rooted in a victim mindset. It's this belief that we're a victim of our circumstances, which have limited our choices down to exactly one. There's only one thing to do. And from that mindset, to admit to having any other choice is literally unthinkable. Even considering any other choice in this belief makes you a bad person. And interestingly, there's a presumption there, like that can only be true if we're fundamentally bad. That even thinking of the bad choices means that you're going to take them. That you're a bad person for even considering looking around that corner at the other choices. But what if it was a choice? Whether to stay in that relationship, whether to stay in that job, whether to pay rent, whether to take care of your children, whether to even stay alive. And notice how much fear there is underneath that, considering these things as choices. Merely framing it as a choice threatens our sense of identity, our ego. But a distinction that I'd like to make here, which helps unravel this and helps get people out of the victim mindset, is there's a world of difference between not having a choice versus making an obvious choice. Choosing to stay, choosing to follow through, choosing to do something difficult, it is no longer the choice, but rather is an obvious choice. And notice that there's a different energy between whether it's the only choice or if it's, oh yeah, that's obvious, I'll do that. The obvious kind of choice comes from a different place within you. The not having a choice has this energy of fear, of lack, and desperation. It's further down the ladder of consciousness. The feeling of obvious has that lighter sense of common sense. It comes from wisdom. And when we see everything as a choice, instead of becoming a horrible person who makes all these terrible choices and destroys their lives and other people's lives, when we see everything as a choice, we actually relax and we become more present. We're less reactive, we're more creative, and actually we make better choices from that place. When we allow ourselves to consider more choices, we are smarter. Because sometimes there's an obvious choice that arises that we can't even think of when we're afraid. When we only think that there's one possible answer, we're going to also eliminate some really creative possibilities that are out there. Because we refuse to see ourselves as anything but a victim. So, as a practice, whenever you catch yourself thinking or saying, I don't have a choice, try on. Look towards this distinction that there's a difference between not having a choice and there being an obvious choice out there. So instead of thinking or saying, I don't have a choice, remind yourself, I always have a choice. I always have an infinite number of choices, an infinite number of options. And if it's tricky, actually sit down and start brainstorming as many options as possible. Instead of it being sort of the tragic, it's either this or this bad option or this bad option, or this good option versus this bad option. Come up with 100 different options, including everything that you think is a terrible idea. And as you tap into this creativity, allowing everything to be a choice, everything to be an option, you might also start finding some good ideas that you just hadn't thought of before. See, when you see everything as a choice, it doesn't mean that you've gained control over the world, but it does allow you to navigate the world better. It allows you to navigate the world with more grace and more creativity. So remember, you always have a choice.